thevoicebeforethevoid.net. Minot Launch Control Center saucer, cited as one indication of outer space visitors. From the Minot Daily News, 1966, December 6th. More than 3 months after it reportedly occurred, an unidentified flying object sighting in the area has been blown up as the lead-off topic in an article entitled "Are Flying Saucers Real?", which appears in the latest issue of Saturday Evening Post magazine. The sighting, says the Post article, occurred at a U.S. Air Force Base Minuteman Missile Launch Control Center. Date of the incident is given as August 25th, 1966. Air Force information officers confirmed such a report was made. It was never released in Minot, but was made to Wright-Patterson Field in Ohio. From there, it presumably was channeled to the Secretary of the Air Force's office, and he, again presumably, forwarded it to the magazine. The article is by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, identified as of Northwestern University's Astronomy Department, and an Air Force consultant on, quote, flying saucers, unquote, from 1948 until this year. The Minot incident is detailed in this manner. A Launch Control Center officer, who was in an underground capsule, discovered static was interfering with radio transmission. While he was attempting to clear the problem, personnel on the surface reported seeing a UFO with a red light high in the sky. At the same time, a radar crew picked up the object at a height estimated at 100,000 feet. Static stopped when the object climbed, the report maintains. After climbing, it began to swoop and dive, then apparently landed some distance away. Quote, Missile Site Control sent a strike team to check. When the team was about 10 miles from the landing site, static disrupted radio contact with them. 5 to 8 minutes later, the glow diminished, and the UFO took off. Another UFO was visually sighted and confirmed by radar. The one that was first sighted passed beneath the second. Radar also confirmed this. The first made for altitude toward the north, and the second seemed to disappear with the glow of red. Unquote. It also is Hynek's assertion that a similar incident occurred near the Minot base a few days earlier. The article does not quote any names of persons involved, but states, quote, a police officer, a reliable man, saw in broad daylight what he called, quote, an object on its edge floating down the side of a hill, wobbling from side to side about 10 feet from the ground. When it reached the valley floor, it climbed to about 100 feet, still tipped on its edge, and moved across the valley to a small reservoir. Unquote. The object, which was about 30 feet in diameter, next appeared to flatten out, and a small dome became visible on top. It hovered over the water for about a minute, then moved to a small field, where it appeared to be landing. It did not touch the ground, however, but hovered at a height of about 10 feet, some 250 feet away from the witness, who was standing by his parked patrol car. The object then tilted up and disappeared rapidly into the clouds. A fantastic story. Yet I interviewed the witness in this case and am personally satisfied that he is above reproach." Unquote. Hynek also details what he terms, quote, "one of the most puzzling cases that I have studied," unquote. This occurring in 1953 in the Bismarck area. It started, he claims, when persons northwest of Rapid City sighted objects, blips also appearing on radar screens at Ellsworth Air Force Base. An F-84 jet dispatched aloft reportedly radioed the object moved twice as fast as the plane, and when the pilot gave chase, the light, quote, "just disappeared," unquote. Later, says the article, quote, "a second F-84 was sent aloft and directed toward the UFO, which still showed on ground radar. After several minutes, the pilot reported seeing an object with a light of varying intensity that alternated from white to green. While the pilot was pursuing the UFO, he noted that his gun sight light had flashed on, indicating that his plane's radar was picking up a target. The object was directly ahead of his aircraft, but at a slightly greater altitude. It then climbed very rapidly. When the pilot saw he was hopelessly losing ground, he broke off the chase. As the object sped off to the north, Ellsworth notified the Spotters Control Center in Bismarck, 220 miles to the north, where a sergeant went out on the roof and saw a UFO. The Air Force had no planes in Bismarck that could be sent after the UFO, which finally disappeared later that night. Unquote. Hynek says he investigated the case himself and was not convinced. Quote, "The entire incident, in my opinion, had too much of an Alice in Wonderland flavor for comfort." Unquote. But while he was skeptical of the Bismarck-Ellsworth report, Hynek apparently had no such qualms concerning the reported sightings in Minot this year, nor other such sightings detailed in the article. For the most part, he writes, he agrees with the Air Force in dismissing the thousands of UFO reports as hoaxes, hallucinations, or misinterpretations of natural phenomena. Quote, "But I cannot explain them all. Of the 15,000 cases that have come to my attention, several hundred are puzzling, and some of the puzzling incidents, perhaps 1 in 25, are bewildering." Unquote. He also declares, quote, "it would be foolish to rule out the possibility," unquote, "that UFOs are really from outer space." An attempt today to get names of base men involved in the sightings met with the response, quote, "Sorry, any information will have to be released by the Secretary of the Air Force." Unquote.